The bridge of the Zornak survey vessel, Starweaver, hummed with an electric tension that bordered on panic. Captain Krelax watched the holographic display with mounting disbelief, her four-fingered hands gripping the command console so tightly that her iridescent skin shifted through a kaleidoscope of anxiety-driven colors. The human vessel should have been destroyed seconds after emerging from the quantum disruption zone. By all known laws of stellar navigation, survival was mathematically impossible. The region they had traversed was a nightmare of gravitational anomalies, radiation storms, and quantum instabilities that had claimed hundreds of advanced exploration vessels from dozens of spacefaring civilizations. Yet here they were. Lieutenant Michael Rodriguez didn't look like someone who had just accomplished the impossible. Seated casually in the pilot's chair, he appeared more interested in the small holographic chess game projected from his wrist computer than the extraordinary journey they had just completed. His dark eyes occasionally flicked to the navigation displays, making minute adjustments with an almost unconscious precision that defied comprehension. Standard communication protocols are ineffective, reported communications specialist Alina Chen, her fingers dancing across a complex interface that translated multiple quantum communication frequencies. Their communication systems don't match any known galactic standard. It's like they're speaking an entirely different language of technological interaction. Captain Krelax's secondary sensory cluster, a delicate network of neural tendrils that extended from her cranial region, began to pulse with an uncomfortable frequency. The human vessel radiated something beyond traditional electromagnetic signatures. It was as if the ship itself was alive, breathing with a complex energy that defied standard scientific understanding. "Run another diagnostic," she commanded, her voice a low resonant tone that typically indicated extreme professional concern. The ship's primary analyst, a veteran researcher named Vorlam, manipulated several holographic displays simultaneously. Each projection showed different analytical perspectives: quantum resonance, biological signatures, technological compatibility. Nothing made sense. The human vessel's whole composition was a nightmare of contradictions. It appeared to be constructed from materials that should be structurally impossible. Carbon-based composites interwoven with molecular structures that seemed to shift and adapt in real time. The ship's exterior wasn't just a protective shell. It was a living, responsive system that seemed to anticipate and counteract environmental challenges before they could manifest. Rodriguez finally looked up from his chess game, catching the alien crew's collectively stunned gaze. He offered a relaxed smile that seemed completely inappropriate given the extraordinary circumstances. "Rough neighborhood you've got out here," he said casually, as if commenting on a minor traffic inconvenience rather than surviving a journey through a region of space that had become a graveyard for countless advanced civilizations. The universal translator struggled to convey the full nuance of his statement. The linguistic algorithms worked overtime, attempting to parse not just the words but the underlying cultural context, the psychological implications, the subtle humor embedded in his tone. Vorlam's analysis revealed something even more disturbing. The human vessel's energy signature suggested it wasn't just a technological construct, it was an integrated biological system. The line between machine and living organism had been completely blurred. "Captain," Vorlam reported, his voice a mixture of scientific excitement and deep existential concern, "their technological integration suggests a level of symbiosis we've never encountered. The ship responds to the crew's biological signatures with a complexity that challenges our entire understanding of technological development." Rodriguez seemed to sense their intense scrutiny. He stood, moving with a fluid grace that appeared almost predatory. Every movement was efficient, calculated, yet somehow spontaneous. He approached the communication interface, his fingers moving in a pattern that suggested he was simultaneously solving complex mathematical equations and preparing to communicate. The Zornak crew watched, collectively holding their breath. First contact had always been a carefully choreographed diplomatic dance. Centuries of interstellar exploration had developed intricate protocols, communication strategies, and cultural assessment methodologies. Humanity, it seemed, had not received the memo. As Rodriguez initiated communication, Captain Krelax realized with a growing sense of profound unease that everything they understood about the universe was about to be fundamentally challenged. The humans had arrived, and nothing would ever be the same. The Zornak research archives stretched across an entire neural complex, a vast repository of accumulated knowledge spanning thousands of galactic cycles. Jack Thompson moved through the holographic displays with an intensity that made the archival attendants nervous. He wasn't just reading history, he was dissecting it. Each projection told a story of human resilience that defied every known principle of species development. Where other civilizations responded to challenges with incremental adaptations, humans seemed to transform entire systems of existence with each crisis. The climate collapse of the mid-21st century was a prime example. Most species would have either perished or sought planetary evacuation. Humans did something entirely unexpected. They'd redesigned their entire technological and social infrastructure, turning environmental devastation into a catalyst for unprecedented innovation. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a leading historian specializing in human adaptive mechanisms, had compiled a comprehensive study that sent shockwaves through the Zornak scientific community. Her research revealed a pattern so extraordinary it challenged the fundamental understanding of evolutionary biology. "Look at this sequence," she explained to Jack, her holographic display illuminating a complex timeline of human technological and social developments. Each global challenge doesn't just trigger survival mechanisms, it generates a complete systemic reimagining. The pandemic of 2020 served as a perfect case study. Where most civilizations would have been crippled by a global health crisis, humans had transformed the event into a quantum leap of medical technology, communication systems, and social organization. Remote work technologies evolved overnight. Medical research accelerated at an impossible pace. Educational systems were completely redesigned in a matter of months. Jack zoomed in on a specific data point. The economic restructuring that followed was nothing short of miraculous. Traditional economic models collapsed, and humans responded by creating entirely new systems of value exchange, collaborative economic platforms, and decentralized resource management. "It's not adaptation," Elena commented, catching the look of bewilderment on Jack's face. "It's systematic reinvention." The neural interface began to overheat, unable to process the complexity of human historical data. Jack watched in fascination as the system struggled, then spontaneously reconfigured itself. A micro-example of the very adaptive mechanism they were studying. Military historical records were equally perplexing. When conventional warfare became unsustainable, humans didn't just develop new weapons. They reimagined conflict resolution entirely. Diplomatic technologies, cultural exchange programs, and collaborative problem-solving platforms emerged that made traditional military strategies obsolete. A recovered archival record showed how humans transformed a potential global conflict in the early 22nd century. Instead of escalating tensions, they developed a comprehensive global communication network that turned potential enemies into collaborative partners. Economic interdependence became a tool of peace, more effective than any weapon. Technological development followed an equally impossible trajectory. Each major breakthrough seemed to emerge from the most unexpected sources. A climate engineering solution developed by a collective of independent researchers. A revolutionary medical treatment conceived by a group of students working in a community lab. A sustainable energy solution created by a team that crossed traditional disciplinary boundaries. "They don't just solve problems," Elena explained, her holographic projection highlighting key moments of human innovation. "They fundamentally reimagine the problem-solving process itself." The most disturbing aspect was the speed of their development. While most advanced civilizations required hundreds of generations to make significant technological leaps, humans accomplished radical transformations within decades, sometimes within years, occasionally within months. Jack discovered a particularly fascinating case study involving global communication technologies. When traditional internet infrastructure became vulnerable, Humans didn't just create a more secure system. They developed an entirely new communication paradigm that made previous technological frameworks look like primitive cave paintings. Decentralized networks, quantum communication protocols, adaptive artificial intelligence systems that learned and evolved in real time. Each innovation was not just a technological advancement, but a complete reimagining of information exchange. "They don't see limitations," Jack muttered, more to himself than to Elena. "They see opportunities for transformation." The research complex around them seemed to vibrate with the weight of this revelation. Humans were not just a species adapting to their environment. They were a universal adaptive mechanism, a living system designed to introduce flexibility and transformation into potentially stagnant ecological and technological ecosystems. As the final data points crystallized, Jack Thompson realized they were looking at something far more profound than a simple species study. This was a fundamental challenge to everything the Zornak understood about evolution, technology, and the nature of progress itself. The universe, it seemed, had been waiting for humanity to arrive and completely rewrite its understanding of possibility. The diplomatic chamber pulsed with a tension that defied traditional communication protocols. Sarah Williams stood at the center, a lone human representative surrounded by representatives from 7 different galactic civilizations, each with communication methods so fundamentally different that simultaneous translation had always been considered impossible. Her file was a marvel of contradictions. 32 years old, no formal diplomatic training by traditional galactic standards. Background in cultural anthropology, neurolinguistics, and what the Zornak classified as adaptive social systems. But those clinical descriptions failed to capture the raw potential that radiated from her presence. The Kalar delegation, silicon-based life forms whose communication relied on complex quantum frequency modulations, had been in perpetual conflict with the Vornex water-based collective for over 3 stellar generations. Their disputes centered on resource-rich planetary systems along the galactic rim, with negotiation attempts resulting in nothing but escalating tensions. Previous diplomatic missions had collapsed spectacularly. Entire translation teams had been driven to psychological breakdown by the complexity of the conflict. Multiple advanced AI systems had simply shut down when attempting to process the intricate layers of cultural misunderstandings. Sarah Williams didn't look like someone about to attempt the impossible. She wore a simple graphene adaptive suit that shifted subtly with her body language. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail. A small neural interface behind her ear, barely visible, was the only indication of advanced technological assistance. "Let's reset the conversation," she said, her voice carrying a remarkable combination of calm authority and subtle empathy. The translation system struggled. It wasn't just about converting words. It was about capturing the nuanced emotional subtext, the cultural implications, the unspoken layers of communication that existed between the lines. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, observing from the Zornak research vessel, watched in fascination. The neural tracking systems showed something extraordinary happening. Sarah wasn't just communicating. She was creating a dynamic communication ecosystem that adapted in real time to the psychological needs of each delegation. With the Kalar, she spoke in precise mathematical sequences that resonated with their quantum communication preferences. To the Vornex water-based representatives, her language shifted to a fluid, contextual communication style that mimicked their liquid-based cognitive processes. When addressing the crystalline Sharan delegation, her communication became a precise, geometrically structured dialogue that respected their highly structured consciousness. But it was more than linguistic adaptation. Sarah was simultaneously solving the underlying conflict by helping each species recognize their shared interests. The resource-rich planetary systems weren't just about mineral extraction. They represented critical ecological zones that were essential to the long-term survival of multiple species. Sarah didn't just point this out. She helped each delegation visualize a collaborative management approach that transformed potential conflict into a mutual survival strategy. "We're not looking at territorial claims," she explained, her neural interface generating real-time holographic projections that spoke to the unique perceptual systems of each delegation. We're looking at a shared ecosystem of mutual survival. The Zornak research team watched in collective astonishment. Traditional diplomatic approaches involved rigid negotiation frameworks, predetermined communication protocols, and carefully managed information exchanges. Humans seem to operate on an entirely different level, viewing communication as a dynamic, living system rather than a static exchange of information. Dr. Rodriguez's analysis revealed something profound. Sarah wasn't just negotiating. She was facilitating a complete psychological transformation. Each delegation was unconsciously adjusting its fundamental understanding of conflict, cooperation, and mutual survival. By the negotiation's third hour, something unprecedented happened. The Kalar, Vornex, and Sharen delegations began to collaborate spontaneously. They were developing joint resource management strategies that no advanced predictive algorithm had ever conceived possible. The neural tracking systems on the Zornak vessel began to overheat. The complexity of the psychological interactions defied their most advanced analytical models. Sarah Williams wasn't just bridging communication gaps. She was fundamentally restructuring the psychological landscape of interspecies interaction. When the negotiations concluded, the result wasn't just a treaty. It was a comprehensive framework for collaborative survival that would reshape galactic resource management for generations. The Zornak research team realized they were witnessing something far more significant than a successful diplomatic mission. This was a demonstration of a fundamentally different approach to existence, one that saw complexity not as a barrier, but as an opportunity for transformation. Humanity, it seemed, didn't just communicate. They reimagined the very nature of communication itself. The research facility hung in low orbit around a neutron star, a marvel of engineering that represented the pinnacle of galactic technological achievement. Daniel Harris stood at the primary workstation, his fingers moving across holographic interfaces with a fluidity that defied human-machine interaction standards. To the Zornak observers, what was happening was nothing short of heresy against established technological development protocols. Neural interfaces weren't new to advanced civilizations, but humans approached the technology as a living, evolving ecosystem rather than a static system of information transfer. Daniel's current project blurred the lines between biological intelligence, artificial computation, and quantum information processing in ways that made the most advanced Zornak researchers deeply uncomfortable. The primary neural network he was developing didn't just process information. It learned, adapted, and evolved in real time, creating new neural pathways that responded to complex problem-solving challenges with an almost sentient creativity. Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched from a secondary observation deck, her diagnostic systems working overtime to comprehend the technological marvel unfolding before her. The neural interface wasn't just a communication tool, it was becoming a collaborative intelligence that expanded human cognitive capabilities in unprecedented ways. "We're not augmenting human intelligence," Daniel explained during a rare moment of external communication. "We're creating a symbiotic cognitive ecosystem." The key breakthrough was remarkably simple in concept, yet impossibly complex in execution. Traditional neural interfaces attempted to create a direct translation between human thought and machine processing. Humans were doing something entirely different. They were creating a dynamic conversation between biological and technological intelligence. Each neural connection wasn't just a data transfer point. It was a learning opportunity. The interface could anticipate cognitive needs, generate creative solutions, and even develop entirely new modes of problem-solving that neither human nor machine could have conceived independently. The Zornak research team tracked the development with a mixture of terror and fascination. Their most advanced predictive algorithms began to malfunction when attempting to model the potential outcomes of this technological approach. A demonstration crystallized their deepest fears. Daniel presented a complex planetary terraforming challenge, a problem that had stumped multiple advanced civilizations for generations. Where traditional approaches relied on massive computational power and predetermined algorithmic solutions, his neural interface took a fundamentally different approach. The system began by breaking down the challenge into its most fundamental components. But instead of following a linear problem-solving approach, it started generating multiple potential solution sets simultaneously. More importantly, it was learning from each potential approach, creating hybrid solutions that defied traditional engineering logic. Dr. Rodriguez's tracking systems showed something extraordinary. The neural interface wasn't just processing information. It was engaging in a form of creative ideation that resembled human brainstorming more than traditional computational problem-solving. Within hours, the system had generated a terraforming approach that could transform hostile planetary environments, using a combination of biological engineering, quantum manipulation, and adaptive nanotechnological systems. The solution was so elegant, so fundamentally different from previous approaches, that it rendered entire libraries of existing planetary engineering research obsolete. The technological integration didn't stop at neural interfaces. Humans were developing biomechanical systems that challenged the very definition of where biological entities ended and technological systems began. Cybernetic implants that could regenerate. Nanotechnological medical systems that could rebuild cellular structures in real time. Adaptive environmental suits that weren't just protective gear but living, breathing extensions of human physiological systems. Each technological breakthrough seemed to emerge from the most unexpected sources. A medical nanite system developed by a collective of independent researchers. A quantum communication protocol created by a team of graduate students working across multiple disciplines. An environmental adaptation technology conceived during a community innovation workshop. The Zornak realized they were witnessing something far more profound than technological development. This was a fundamental reimagining of the relationship between biological intelligence, technological systems, and the very nature of innovation itself. Humanity wasn't just developing technology. They were creating living, adaptive technological ecosystems that could learn, grow, and transform themselves in real time. As the neural interface completed its planetary terraforming proposal, Daniel Harris allowed himself a small smile. To him, this wasn't about technological achievement. It was about expanding the very boundaries of what was possible. The universe, it seemed, was about to be redesigned, one impossible innovation at a time. The quantum research facility existed in a state of perpetual uncertainty. Located at the intersection of multiple dimensional boundaries, it was a place where the traditional laws of physics seemed more like gentle suggestions than immutable rules. Dr. Robert Lee stood at the primary observation point, his eyes tracking multiple holographic displays that revealed something fundamentally impossible. The Human Consciousness Monitoring Array was doing more than just collecting data. It was actively reshaping the quantum landscape around it. Most advanced civilizations approached quantum mechanics as an observational science. Humans treated it like a collaborative conversation with the fundamental fabric of reality itself. The breakthrough had come from an unexpected source. A team of researchers spanning multiple disciplines, theoretical physics, neuroscience, cultural anthropology, and computational theory, had discovered that human collective consciousness generated quantum entanglements that went far beyond traditional understanding of observer effects. It wasn't just that humans observed quantum phenomena. They participated in them. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's preliminary analysis suggested something profoundly disturbing. Human emotional states, collective experiences, and even cultural narratives seemed to generate quantum probability fields that could subtly alter fundamental universal constants. The Zornak research team struggled to comprehend the implications. Their most advanced quantum tracking systems began to malfunction when attempting to model human cognitive interactions. It was as if human consciousness existed in a state of perpetual quantum superposition, simultaneously existing in multiple potential states. A series of controlled experiments revealed the extent of this extraordinary phenomenon. When large groups of humans focused on a specific outcome, the probability of that outcome dramatically increased. It wasn't magic or coincidence. It was a measurable quantum interaction that defied every known principle of physical causality. Dr. Lee pulled up a series of historical data points: global movements, collective human efforts, moments of massive shared emotional experience. Each left subtle but measurable quantum signatures that suggested a deeper connection between human consciousness and the fundamental structure of reality. The Climate Restoration Project of 2089 served as a perfect case study. When a global coalition of researchers, activists, and citizens collectively focused on planetary healing, the quantum probability fields began to shift in unprecedented ways. Environmental recovery happened at a rate that should have been statistically impossible. "We're not just observing reality," Dr. Rodriguez explained during a classified briefing. "We're actively participating in its creation." The quantum monitoring systems struggled to maintain coherence. Traditional measurement protocols broke down when attempting to track human cognitive interactions. It was as if human consciousness existed in a state that was fundamentally incompatible with existing scientific understanding. More disturbing were the implications for universal causality. Humans seemed to generate quantum entanglement networks that could propagate across vast distances, creating information transfer mechanisms that bypassed traditional physical limitations. A researcher named Michael Chen discovered something even more extraordinary: human creativity. The act of imagining something that did not yet exist generated quantum probability waves that could actually influence potential future outcomes. It wasn't prediction. It was a form of collective reality generation. The research facility's most advanced quantum simulation chamber began to overheat. The complex interactions between human cognitive states and quantum probability fields were generating energy outputs that exceeded all known theoretical limitations. Dr. Lee watched in fascination as the holographic displays revealed a profound truth. Humanity wasn't just a species that existed within the universe. They were a fundamental mechanism for universal adaptation and transformation. Each collective human experience generated quantum signatures that could subtly reshape probability itself. Cultural narratives, shared emotional experiences, collective problem-solving efforts, all generated quantum fields that went far beyond traditional understanding of consciousness. The Zornak research team realized they were witnessing something far more profound than a scientific discovery. This was a fundamental challenge to the nature of reality itself. Humans weren't just observers of the universe. They were active participants in its continuous creation. As the quantum monitoring systems struggled to maintain coherence, Dr. Lee allowed himself a moment of profound understanding. Humanity represented something far more significant than a biological species. They were a living, breathing quantum computation engine, unconsciously rewriting the universe's base code through the simple act of existing. The universe would never be the same. The High Council chamber of the Zornak Galactic Confederation pulsed with a tension that threatened to tear the carefully maintained diplomatic fabric apart. Holographic representations of 7 different stellar civilizations flickered with an intensity that suggested imminent collapse. Ambassador Catherine Rodriguez stood at the center of the storm, the lone human representative facing a collective judgment that would determine the fate of her entire species. Extinction, argued the Kalar representative, their quantum-based consciousness generating interference patterns that demonstrated pure computational rage. Immediate and total removal is the only rational response. The research compiled by multiple civilizations painted a terrifying picture. Humanity represented an unprecedented threat, not through military might or technological aggression, but through something far more dangerous. They were a fundamental disruption to the established universal order. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's comprehensive report had been circulated through secure channels. It wasn't just a scientific analysis. It was a profound warning about the nature of human potential. The Vornex water-based collective had been the first to recognize the true depth of the threat. Their advanced predictive algorithms had completely collapsed when attempting to model human behavioral patterns. Where most species followed predictable evolutionary trajectories, humans seemed to generate entirely new paradigms of existence with each generational cycle. "They are not a species," the Vornex representative proclaimed, their liquid-based communication generating holographic representations that shifted like complex emotional storms. "They are a universal adaptive mechanism." The diplomatic records showed a disturbing pattern. Every attempt to contain, control, or limit human expansion had resulted in unexpected transformations. Technological embargoes became catalysts for innovation. Territorial restrictions generated entirely new approaches to resource management. Attempts at cultural isolation produced explosive creative breakthroughs. Ambassador Rodriguez understood the stakes. This wasn't a traditional diplomatic negotiation. This was a trial of species-level potential. "We are not a threat," she stated, her voice carrying a calm that seemed to generate its own gravitational field. "We are an opportunity for universal transformation." The holographic tracking systems revealed something extraordinary happening. As she spoke, the quantum probability fields in the chamber began to shift. The very fabric of the diplomatic space seemed to become more malleable, more adaptive. The Kalar representative's quantum consciousness began to experience cascading interference patterns. Their most advanced communication protocols were being fundamentally rewritten by the simple act of human communication. Intelligence reports told a story of systematic disruption. Human colonies didn't just survive in challenging environments. They transformed those environments entirely. Uninhabitable planets became thriving ecosystems. Resource-poor systems became centers of unprecedented innovation. A classified file detailed the Jupiter Moon Research Station, a human outpost that had developed a completely new approach to planetary engineering. Where traditional colonization methods required massive technological interventions, humans had developed symbiotic ecological restoration techniques that worked with planetary systems rather than against them. The Shuran crystalline delegation presented their primary argument for human elimination. Statistical models showed that human expansion would fundamentally reshape galactic power structures within 3 generations, not through conquest, but through a process of continuous adaptive transformation. "They do not conquer," the Shuran representative explained, their geometric communication patterns generating complex holographic representations. "They fundamentally reimagine the nature of existence itself." Ambassador Rodriguez allowed the accusations to wash over her. She understood something the other civilizations had not yet comprehended. Humanity's strength was not in resistance, but in adaptation. Not in conflict, but in transformation. "We are not here to replace," she said quietly. "We are here to collaborate." The diplomatic tracking systems began to malfunction. The quantum probability fields generated by her statement were creating interference patterns that defied computational modeling. As the debate reached its crescendo, something extraordinary happened. The very fabric of the diplomatic space began to shift. Communication protocols that had been fixed for millennia started to become fluid, adaptive, transformative. The Zornak lead researcher, watching from a secure observation point, realized a profound truth. This was no longer about a single species. This was about the fundamental nature of universal evolution itself. Humanity was not a threat to be eliminated. They were the universe's mechanism for continuous transformation. The invasion began precisely at 300 hours Galactic Standard Time. 7 different civilizations combined their most advanced military technologies in a coordinated strike designed to completely neutralize human potential. Jessica Martinez watched from the Primary Defense Coordination Center, her neural interface processing information at a rate that would have overwhelmed any other species' computational systems. This wasn't going to be a traditional military engagement. It was going to be a complete reimagining of conflict resolution. The first wave of attacks targeted human colony worlds, carefully selected points that should have been strategically vulnerable. Massive energy weapons capable of shattering planetary crusts. Quantum disruption fields designed to completely destabilize planetary ecosystems. Gravitational manipulation technologies that could tear entire planetary systems apart. What happened next defied every known principle of military engagement. Instead of mounting a traditional defensive response, human colonies began to transform the very nature of the attack itself. Planetary defense systems weren't just protective. They were adaptive, collaborative mechanisms that turned incoming destruction into opportunities for systemic transformation. On the colony world of New Santiago, the invasion fleet found their most advanced quantum weapons suddenly repurposed. Energy meant to destroy was redirected into planetary restoration systems. Gravitational manipulation fields were transformed into ecological reconstruction networks. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's real-time analysis showed something extraordinary. The human response wasn't just defensive. It was a complete systemic re-engineering of the conflict itself. Communication networks that should have been destroyed became distributed intelligence systems. Military installations transformed into collaborative problem-solving platforms. Even the most devastating attacks were being processed, understood, and fundamentally reimagined. The Kalar invasion fleet found their most advanced computational systems becoming entangled with human neural networks. Their precise, logic-driven attack algorithms began to develop something dangerously close to empathy. Targeting systems started generating potential collaborative solutions instead of destruction pathways. Jessica Martinez wasn't just coordinating a defense. She was facilitating a complete transformation of interstellar conflict dynamics. Each invasion point became a nexus of unexpected possibility. Where other species would have responded with pure military force, humans were generating multi-dimensional response mechanisms that simultaneously defended, communicated, and transformed the very nature of the conflict. On the outer colony worlds, human settlers began developing real-time ecological adaptation technologies. Incoming weapon systems were being transformed into planetary restoration tools. Quantum disruption fields became advanced communication networks. Gravitational manipulation technologies were repurposed into environmental healing mechanisms. The Vornex water-based collective found their most advanced liquid computational systems becoming entangled with human collaborative networks. Their invasion strategies were being systematically rewritten, transformed from destruction protocols into potential cooperative frameworks. "We're not fighting," Jessica explained to her command team. "We're having a conversation." Real-time tracking systems showed the true depth of human response. Instead of traditional military countermeasures, they were generating complex adaptive response networks. Every attack became an opportunity for systemic understanding, every weapon a potential tool for collaborative transformation. Diplomatic communication channels that should have been destroyed became distributed intelligence platforms. Military communication networks transformed into cross-species problem-solving systems. The very technologies designed to eliminate humans were being systematically repurposed into mechanisms of mutual understanding. The Sharan crystalline invasion fleet discovered their most precise computational systems becoming entangled with human creativity networks. Their pure mathematical invasion strategies began developing unexpected layers of contextual understanding. Dr. Rodriguez's tracking systems revealed the profound truth. This wasn't a traditional military engagement. This was a complete reimagining of interspecies interaction. By the conflict's third day, something extraordinary had happened. The invasion was no longer an attack. It had become a collaborative problem-solving exercise. Invasion fleets found themselves engaged in complex communication networks that transformed their fundamental understanding of conflict. Weapon systems became communication platforms. Destruction protocols evolved into collaborative research initiatives. Jessica Martinez understood the deeper strategy. Humanity wasn't just defending itself, it was fundamentally redesigning the very nature of interstellar conflict. The universe would never be the same. Conflict had become a conversation. The research facility existed between dimensions, a delicate construct of quantum probability and collective consciousness. Dr. Robert Lee stood at the intersection of multiple reality streams, watching something unprecedented unfold. Humanity was more than a species, more than a civilization. They were a fundamental mechanism of universal transformation. The collected knowledge of 7 advanced galactic civilizations had been systematically reprocessed, reimagined, and transformed. What began as an attempt to understand and potentially eliminate. Humanity had become a profound revelation about the nature of existence itself. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's final comprehensive report would become the most significant document in galactic historical records. It wasn't just a scientific analysis. It was a fundamental reimagining of universal potential. The quantum tracking systems showed a truth that defied traditional scientific understanding. Human consciousness wasn't just a biological phenomenon. It was a living, adaptive ecosystem that generated probability fields capable of reshaping fundamental universal constants. Every human experience generated quantum signatures that propagated across dimensional boundaries. Collective emotional experiences, shared cultural narratives, collaborative problem-solving efforts, each created ripples of potential that transformed the very fabric of reality. The Zornak research team had discovered something profound. Humanity wasn't a species that existed within the universe. They were a universal adaptive mechanism, a living system designed to introduce flexibility, creativity, and transformation into potentially stagnant cosmic ecosystems. Historical records told a story of continuous transformation. Each global challenge became a catalyst for innovation. Environmental disasters sparked unprecedented ecological restoration technologies. Social conflicts generated new frameworks of understanding. Technological limitations became opportunities for revolutionary breakthroughs. Dr. Lee's dimensional monitoring systems revealed the deeper truth. Humans didn't just adapt to challenges. They fundamentally reimagined the nature of challenge itself. The collective experiences of human civilization generated quantum probability fields that could subtly alter universal constants. It wasn't magic or coincidence. It was a measurable phenomenon that suggested a deeper connection between consciousness and the fundamental structure of reality. Preliminary research indicated that human potential went far beyond traditional biological limitations. Their ability to generate adaptive technologies, transform ecological systems, and create collaborative networks suggested they were something more than a traditional species. They were a living, breathing quantum computation engine, unconsciously rewriting the universe's base code through the simple act of existing. The diplomatic records from the recent conflict told a remarkable story. What began as an existential threat had transformed into the most significant collaborative research initiative in galactic history. Invasion fleets became research partnerships. Weapon systems became communication platforms. Destruction protocols evolved into joint problem-solving initiatives. Dr. Rodriguez's final analysis suggested that humanity's true strength wasn't in resistance or conquest. It was in their unprecedented ability to find connection, to generate understanding, to transform potential conflict into collaborative opportunity. The quantum tracking systems began to generate complex interference patterns that defied traditional computational modeling. It was as if the very act of observing human potential was fundamentally changing the nature of observation itself. Civilizations that had sought to eliminate humanity now sought to understand them. Military strategies transformed into collaborative research initiatives. Invasion protocols became cultural exchange programs. The universal constant was no longer a fixed mathematical principle. It had become a dynamic, adaptive ecosystem of potential. Dr. Lee watched as the final dimensional probability maps crystallized. Humanity represented something far more significant than a biological species. They were a fundamental mechanism of universal adaptation, a living system designed to introduce flexibility, creativity, and transformation into the cosmic ecosystem. The research facility trembled with the weight of this revelation. The universe would never be the same. Humanity was not a threat to be controlled. They were an opportunity to be understood. In the infinite complexity of existence, they had become something extraordinary, a catalyst for continuous transformation, the universe's mechanism for reimagining possibility.